Listen carefully because tonight's story will make you question how far those in power might go to protect their secrets. Imagine waking up in one of Washington, D.C.'s most prestigious districts to the deafening sound of sirens. Federal agents swarming a posh apartment complex like they're expecting to find something far more dangerous than just another crime scene. But this isn't some routine investigation. 2 people are dead, and the government has locked down every shred of evidence within hours. No one seems to know why, or at least no one is willing to talk. What could be so important, so damaging, that it prompts an immediate clampdown at the highest levels? Welcome to the tale of Maria Torres and Nathan Grayson, a double tragedy laced with espionage, treachery, and the razor-thin line between loyalty and betrayal. March 12, 2010, dawn broke over Washington, D.C., as the city's diplomatic district transformed into a scene of chaos. Federal agents, moving with urgency and precision, descended upon an upscale apartment building. The usually hushed, well-kept sidewalks were dotted with black SUVs and blaring sirens. Passers-by looked on in shock. This kind of commotion rarely intruded on such an exclusive slice of the capital. The rumor mill kicked into high gear almost immediately. Some said it was a drug bust, others whispered about terrorism. But the grim truth would prove stranger than anyone could have guessed. Inside that luxury complex, authorities discovered 2 bodies. The first belonged to Maria Torres, a talented State Department secretary who was steadily climbing the ranks of government service. The second victim turned out to be someone with a far more cryptic past: Nathan Grayson, a longtime member of the Secret Service working undercover. Initially, the press speculated it was a murder-suicide linked to a love affair. Yet as the dust settled, it became clear that something deeper was at play, something riddled with espionage, hidden agendas, and potentially the hush-hush involvement of powerful agencies keen to cover their tracks. But to truly grasp what happened on that ill-fated night, we need to step back in time. Let's start with Maria Torres, her upbringing, her dreams, and how she came to cross paths with a man whose secrets would ultimately seal both their fates. Maria Torres entered the world in 1981, growing up in a sun-scorched pocket of El Paso, Texas. Life there wasn't easy. Her father was a construction worker whose gigs seemed to dry up at the worst moments, and her mother cleaned houses across town to keep food on the table. They struggled, but they never stopped encouraging Maria to aim higher. From the earliest days of her childhood, she was taught that education was her best chance to escape the relentless pull of poverty. At 15, Maria had already begun carving out a reputation as a determined overachiever at El Paso High School. Teachers noticed she was never afraid to speak up in class. She'd ask questions long after the bell rang. She started volunteering at shelters on weekends, reading to children and helping her mother with house-cleaning jobs whenever there was time. Even as a teenager, Maria carried the weight of her family's hopes on her shoulders. They placed their dreams in her hands and she had no intention of letting them down. Her diligence paid off. In 1999, Maria graduated as valedictorian. Despite scholarship offers, money was always tight, so she spent the next couple of years juggling multiple part-time jobs to cover her community college fees. Eventually, she transferred to a 4-year university in Austin, majoring in public administration. Maria's dream was bold yet clear. She wanted to change policies for people struggling like her parents. By the time she earned her degree in 2004, the first in her entire family, her parents beamed with pride. That same summer, with her degree and little else, Maria stuffed her belongings into a beat-up used car and set off for Washington, D.C. The capital was a mecca of policy making, the epicenter where she believed she could truly make a difference. Yet upon her arrival, the city proved overwhelming. The imposing architecture and the swarms of polished professionals filled her with excitement and dread at once. Despite feeling like a small fish in a vast ocean, she dove in, taking an entry-level position at a nonprofit. Over the next few years, her spirit and unrelenting work ethic propelled her career forward. She honed her administrative skills, earned the trust of superiors, and gained an insider's view of how DC really worked, an environment crammed with power brokers, bureaucratic red tape, and backroom deals. Her tenacity caught the attention of influential people, and by 2008 she landed a coveted job at the U.S. Department of State, handling schedules, logistics, and daily tasks for senior diplomats. This was no small feat. She found herself rubbing elbows, albeit from a desk, with people who shaped national policy on a global stage. But while her professional rise was meteoric, Maria's personal life stood in stark contrast. Her schedule left little room for real friendships or dating, and her few close connections were the potted plants in her high-rise studio apartment. She often wondered if she was sacrificing too much in pursuit of her ambition. Her longing for a deeper human bond gnawed at her, yet each day she woke with fresh determination to build a career that mattered. Nathan Grayson was, in many ways, the mirror image of Maria, or at least that's how it appeared at first. Born in 1968 in Alexandria, Virginia, his was a life of structure, opportunity, and relative privilege. His father was a retired Navy officer, and his mother a tireless homemaker who enforced discipline with a gentle but firm hand. Nathan excelled in academics and sports from an early age, leading to a promising academic record by the time he finished high school. In 1990, he graduated from the University of Virginia, already pegged by certain recruiters for government work. 4 years later, in 1994, he joined the Secret Service, climbing quickly through the ranks. Known for his combination of meticulous intelligence gathering and calm under pressure, Nathan developed a reputation as a rock-solid agent, fiercely devoted to his mission. By 2010, he was embedded at the State Department on a covert assignment to build a case against a suspected Russian intelligence operative named Viktor Lenko, a diplomat rumored to be orchestrating a clandestine spy network on American soil. Nathan's job demanded every ounce of cunning he possessed. By day, he lived the cover story of a logistics manager, dealing with mundane scheduling or administrative tasks. By night, he sifted through intelligence files, charted suspect connections, and prepared for the day he could bring down Lenko's entire operation. Although married with children in suburban Virginia, Nathan had learned early in his undercover career how to compartmentalize his life. He kept personal and professional concerns rigidly separated. Or so he thought. Everything shifted in April 2009, when Maria first laid eyes on him during a departmental briefing. He moved through the room with a casual confidence that turned heads. She found him fascinatingly distant. Beneath the polished suits and mild demeanor, there was an air of quiet authority. For Nathan, Maria stood out as the bright, lively soul among the gray-suited functionaries of D.C. Whenever he passed her desk, he might pause to share a word of encouragement or ask something trivial. Soon these casual chats became extended conversations. Their mutual attraction grew in the unlikeliest of places, the hushed corridors of government offices. By October 2009, sparks had ignited into a full-blown affair. They began meeting outside the office, scheduling secret dinners, and eventually ending up in Nathan's rented Capitol Hill apartment, a place he used during the workweek to maintain his cover. Maria found Nathan refreshingly attentive compared to the emotionally distant men she'd known in D.C. Meanwhile, Nathan was enamored by Maria's sense of purpose and her wide-eyed belief in doing good. It was almost enough to make him forget the moral gymnastics he performed daily to keep his real life hidden. But the deeper they fell, the more precarious everything became. Nathan's once flawless discipline wavered. He began to slip up, like leaving behind sensitive documents in his car or ignoring standard protocols to grab a quick late-night drink with Maria. Perhaps he told himself it was harmless, just a short break from a life spent lying to everyone. Maria, for her part, sensed inconsistencies in Nathan's stories. His backstory was full of vague references to routine tasks and logistical duties. He dodged questions about his personal life as though one honest reply would topple the entire facade. Still, she fell harder for him, convincing herself that everyone has parts of their life they'd rather keep private. But by the time the calendar hit January 2010, the illusions began to crumble. Maria noticed a locked briefcase hidden away in Nathan's closet. Her heart skipped a beat when she spotted it. It wasn't something a mere logistics manager was likely to lug around. She also observed him carrying an extra phone, sleek, unmarked, decidedly out of place. Then there were the phone calls he took behind closed doors, whispering in a hushed tone that made her shiver with suspicion. One evening, while Nathan was out, Maria mustered the courage to search his apartment. Scouring his personal drawers, she stumbled onto a set of photographs that changed everything. Pictures of Nathan, a beautiful woman who had to be his wife, and 2 children in front of a charming suburban home. It was proof of a life he had never mentioned, proof that her lover was not who he claimed to be. Maria's breath caught in her throat. A storm of anger, jealousy, and heartbreak coalesced in her chest. She had always known he was secretive, but never in her worst nightmares had she considered he might be married with a family. The realization stung like betrayal's cruelest edge. When Nathan returned, she confronted him silently, placing the photo on the coffee table in a silent accusation. Caught off guard, Nathan finally revealed the truth. Not only was he married, but he was also an undercover Secret Service agent. He argued that secrecy was non-negotiable for his line of work, that it was all to protect her. He spoke of national security, of the real dangers lurking around them. But for Maria, those words rang hollow. She felt used, misled, and humiliated. Even worse, she found herself tangled in something far more dangerous than mere infidelity, espionage, clandestine missions, and possibly risking her own safety. By mid-February 2010, any tender feelings Maria had for Nathan boiled over into fury. She recalled how wholeheartedly she'd believed him and how she'd pinned her hopes on a man who was, in fact, living a double life. This swirl of betrayal morphed into a growing need for revenge. Drawing on the fierce determination that had shaped her entire life, Maria began plotting her next moves. She slipped a tiny digital recorder into her purse, purchased under an assumed name, and decided she'd gather every piece of evidence she could about Nathan's secret identity and unethical conduct. In the following weeks, she covertly recorded conversations. Nathan, unaware of the device capturing his every word, let slip references to foreign diplomats, surveillance operations, and cryptic mentions of a target, details that, had they become public, would be catastrophic for his mission. Meanwhile, Maria typed out an anonymous letter to a major media outlet, attaching encrypted audio clips as supporting evidence. She was playing with fire, sure, but she believed exposing Nathan's duplicity was her only path to reclaiming her dignity. Unbeknownst to Maria, she was not the only one suspicious of Nathan's recent behavior. His superiors had already raised red flags about his discrepancies in mission logs, missed protocols, and inattentiveness. As soon as they discovered that an unknown party had been asking questions about Nathan Grayson, the situation escalated. The Secret Service's internal watchers labeled Maria as a potential threat, someone who could blow open an ongoing covert operation. And in the high-stakes realm of international espionage, such threats are often neutralized, quietly, swiftly, and without remorse. Maria, caught in the chaos of her own heartbreak and quest for justice, had no clue she was under surveillance herself. She pressed on, determined to expose Nathan. Day by day, she inched closer to a collision with forces far beyond her control. The tension around her apartment was palpable, as though the air bristled with the electricity of an approaching storm. March 5, 2010, 11:45 p.m., that storm finally broke. Neighbors in Maria's high-end DC apartment building heard a harrowing argument coming from her unit. Maria's voice, usually so measured, rose in frantic pleas, while a second, male voice responded with steely indignation. Then a single gunshot ripped through the silence, echoing down the well-lit hallway. In an instant, everything changed. Alarmed tenants called 911, and the corridors filled with whispered speculation. By the time authorities arrived, they found Maria's door ajar. Inside, Maria lay on the living room carpet, a bullet wound in her chest, her hand outstretched toward a shattered phone. Blood pooled beneath her, turning the light carpet into a ghastly swirl of crimson. The rest of the apartment remained unsettlingly neat, except for minor signs of struggle, an overturned coffee table, scattered paperwork. The unnerving hush suggested the violence had been sudden, swift, and decisive. Just 2 blocks away, at around 12:15 a.m., a patrol officer stumbled upon a car idling awkwardly by the curb, headlights slicing through the dark. Slumped in the driver's seat was Nathan Grayson, a fatal gunshot wound to his temple. His service weapon rested loosely in his hand, and at a first glance, it looked like a murder-suicide scenario. A man kills his lover in a fit of jealousy, then takes his own life. It wouldn't have been the first time DC law enforcement had seen such a tragedy. Initially, the police built their narrative around this assumption, but something felt off. Maria's phone lay smashed on her living room floor. Forensics soon uncovered partial recordings that indicated she had been gathering incriminating evidence. And that suggested a motive more complex than a scorned lover lashing out. As investigators combed through her emails, they found references to her plan to reveal Nathan's identity and compromised mission. She had been about to go public. Or so it seemed. As the detectives followed these leads, they were shocked to find themselves abruptly blocked. By March 10, 2010, merely 5 days after the killings, a high-ranking Secret Service official swooped in. Invoking national security, he ordered the local authorities to relinquish all case materials, including Maria's laptop, phone records, and the partial audio files recovered by the forensic techs. The DC Metro Police were left in the dark, cut off from the evidence they had painstakingly gathered. An uneasy hush settled over the station, replaced by rumors. Why would the Secret Service scramble to claim jurisdiction over what appeared to be a run-of-the-mill domestic homicide? That question only became more urgent when, on March 15, 2010, ballistics tests came back. They revealed the bullet that ended Maria's life did not match the caliber of Nathan's sidearm. That single fact turned the entire case on its head. If Nathan hadn't fired the shot that killed Maria, who did? Just as it was beginning to look like someone else had pulled the trigger, new surveillance footage from Maria's neighborhood surfaced. An unmarked black SUV had parked discreetly outside her building moments before the gunshot. The vehicle was later traced to the Secret Service's Covert Operations Division, an explosive discovery. If that SUV belonged to another agent, could it be that both Maria and Nathan had been murdered? When investigators took a closer look at the scene in Nathan's car, they found more anomalies. The angle of his gunshot wound didn't quite align with what they'd expect from a self-inflicted shot. Defensive bruising on his arms suggested a struggle. While the official line said he died by suicide, the evidence suggested otherwise. Bit by bit, it became apparent Nathan had likely been executed, leaving behind a neatly staged crime scene to mislead the public and close the case quickly. Within days, a handful of whistleblowers confirmed what the local cops were already suspecting. Maria Torres and Nathan Grayson had been systematically eliminated. Maria was a liability for possessing top-secret intelligence and threatening to expose it. Nathan was compromised by his emotional entanglement, defying orders in a last-ditch effort to protect Maria from the very agency he served. As soon as these revelations leaked to a dogged investigative journalist, the story splashed across major headlines on March 20, 2010. The journalist's article detailed how the Secret Service had tracked Maria's attempts to contact the press, how they viewed her recordings and knowledge of Nathan's covert mission as a catastrophic threat to national security. And with the target of that mission, Russian diplomat Viktor Lenko, still active, they refused to let a potential embarrassment overshadow their operation. In cold terms, the piece described Maria's shooting as a sanctioned hit, concluding that Nathan was also silenced so that no loose ends remained. Public outrage was instant and electric. The notion that the government could orchestrate such a lethal cover-up rattled citizens who still clung to faith in the nation's institutions. Meanwhile, official spokespeople scrambled to respond. By April 1, 2010, the Secret Service had put forth a carefully worded defense. Maria Torres was an unauthorized individual with knowledge of sensitive operations, threatening an entire mission. Nathan Grayson, they claimed, had veered off course, compromising national security by letting personal feelings muddy his professional responsibilities. That justification, however, could not quell the uproar. To many, it sounded like they were trying to rationalize two premeditated murders, all in the name of political expedience. In the aftermath, congressional committees demanded transparency, but they were met with blacked-out documents and hollow assurances. Public attention simmered, briefly soared, but inevitably moved on to the next big scandal in Washington. The apartments where Maria and Nathan died remained quiet reminders of a story that, for all its coverage, never reached a tidy conclusion. No matter how often the authorities repeated their lines about national security, the echoes of those gunshots lingered. Relatives, friends, and a handful of enraged activists pressed for answers, but official channels refused to budge, citing secrecy at every turn. What can we glean from this? The final tragedy of Maria Torres and Nathan Grayson underscores the lethal intersection of human emotion and state power. On one level, it's a cautionary tale about infidelity. Two people found themselves drawn to each other, unable to resist the gravitational pull of passion, even as they stumbled through the corridors of government secrets. Yet it's also a sobering reflection on how personal betrayal can slip seamlessly into high-level conspiracy. For Maria, who devoted her entire existence to forging a better life, love became her downfall. She glimpsed a side of Washington that devoured idealism with merciless efficiency. For Nathan, who had sworn to protect his country at all costs, the line between duty and murder was erased in the hush of departmental briefings and clandestine orders. Both paid for that moral fog with their lives. One of the greatest tragedies is that Maria was so close to achieving what she wanted: a significant role in the machinery of government, shaping policy for those in need. And Nathan nearly completed his mission. Some believed he was just weeks away from gathering conclusive evidence to bring down an influential spy network. Had these two not become entangled, might they have each succeeded in their goals? Instead, they ended up ensnared in a labyrinth of espionage politics, an underworld that eradicates obstacles with brutal efficiency. Questions will always remain. Would either have survived if Maria had never decided to blow the whistle? Could Nathan have protected her if he'd confessed everything sooner? Might the tragic end have been averted if the agency had handled Maria's discovery more diplomatically, or offered her safety in exchange for silence? We'll never know. Their story is now sealed, a harrowing lesson in the costs of unchecked secrecy. For those who watch from the sidelines, this case leaves an unsettling realization. Once you're labeled a liability in the clandestine theater of espionage, the system can close around you like a fist, with no concern for fairness, no room for compassion. The spiral that pulled Maria and Nathan into its center also pulled in bystanders. Neighbors who heard the gunshot, police officers who tried to do their jobs, journalists who risked their careers for the truth. All found themselves caught in the undertow of national security, that great unstoppable force that can overshadow even the most basic demands for justice. In the public eye, the memory of this case merges with countless other stories of conspiracies and government cover-ups. For a while, talk shows and newspapers will stir up righteous outrage, pointing fingers and demanding investigations. Then, inevitably, the tide of attention recedes, replaced by fresh headlines. But for those intimately involved, Maria's family for instance, there is no moving on. A bright, earnest daughter, taken at the threshold of what should have been her brightest years. Or Nathan's wife and children, left to grapple with the knowledge that his secrets, which were meant to keep them secure, proved fatal instead. And what of the fact that he died on a lonely street, a bullet in his head, carefully posed to absolve the agency that once praised his loyalty? Sometimes the story's final twist is the quiet, destructive aftermath. The hush that settles over official corridors, the sealed files, the black SUVs that vanish as quickly as they come. True accountability remains elusive. Whistleblowers risk everything for fleeting glimpses of truth, while families and friends are left in the dark. Each new detail that emerges raises more troubling possibilities, illustrating how fragile any sense of safety can be when confronted by those with the power and the will to hide their actions behind layers of classification. In the end, the double murder in Washington's diplomatic district will forever be etched into the annals of espionage lore, a cautionary reminder that beneath the polished veneer of government offices lie labyrinths of secrets, hidden alliances, and chilling betrayals. Maria Torres and Nathan Grayson are casualties of a machine that recognized their individual plights only insofar as those plights threatened the broader agenda. We might ask ourselves, how can a system sworn to protect its citizens condone what appears to be cold-blooded executions? Where do we draw the line between safeguarding national interests and crossing into authoritarian territory? Is it truly impossible to reconcile love, ambition, and the pursuit of justice with the shadowy demands of covert operations? These are the questions that remain, echoing in the hush of the archives, in the battered hearts of the victims' loved ones, and in the uncertain eyes of every agent who wonders what might happen should they too stray from the path. Today you and I sit here, glimpsing only fragments of the truth. The rest remains redacted, sealed away behind the steel bars of secrecy. But the evidence we do have is enough to paint a stark conclusion. In a world driven by espionage, where loyalty can be bought or destroyed, two people seeking love and personal meaning became obstacles. And obstacles were removed, efficiently, mercilessly, without apology. The official line may read like a half-hearted script: compromised agent, reckless betrayal, threat to national security. But in the hush that follows, we recognize the real cost of those words: 2 human lives, extinguished to keep unstoppable wheels turning. Their plight sends a chilling message: in the shadows of power, no one is truly safe. So the next time you wander the stately avenues of Washington, D.C., the next time you hear about some scandal or hush-hush directive, remember the story of Maria Torres and Nathan Grayson. They remind us that behind each official press release, behind each stoic mention of security concerns, real souls are often left to pay the price. For Maria and Nathan, the currency was their very lives. Perhaps that's the final heartbreak of this saga. The system they served crushed them to preserve itself. And that's the shocking truth behind the seemingly simple label of a double murder that erupted one March morning in the nation's capital. If you think you've heard it all, think again. In a place where secrets lurk around every corner, it pays to remember that betrayal can come from the very institutions we trust the most. And once you're on the wrong side of the line, even love isn't enough to save you. This case stands alongside other disturbing stories of power abused, of protectors turned predators, and of lives destroyed in the name of some greater agenda. So if you found yourself riveted by this tragic account, be sure to look into the unsettling parallels with that infamous case involving a sheriff who exploited his power and left tragedy in his wake. We'll be bringing you more tales that pull back the curtain on hidden crimes and lethal secrets. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stay alert. You never know which story might reveal just how fragile our notions of safety and justice truly are.